All right. Hello, cryptocurrency investing community. My name is Jeff Kirdeikis. I'm really excited about today. We have Shingo Lavine, the CEO and founder of Ethos, here with us to talk today. Shingo, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I think first, to address absolutely anything, we have to talk about the elephant in the room for a lot of the crypto traders here today. What are your thoughts on the current state of the crypto market? And what direction do you foresee coming, or what does this mean to you?
Well, it's funny because internally we always talk about this makes no sense because all the signals that we've been seeing in the kind of traditional financial industry are really pointing to the opposite. There's been tremendous strides in kind of the regulatory and legal and financial structures that are beginning to kind of pop up in this industry, which we've been seeing kind of in recent news. A lot of kind of technological developments and a lot of kind of real world applications being developed, and to see kind of the current market conditions completely ignoring that is kind of, it's surprising to us. But then again, we don't really live in a rational market right now, and it's just something I think we have to live with until people start to kind of get grounded in reality.
I think this is just it. Yeah, the market fluctuations and the volatility kind of is something that is almost unpredictable at best. But I think what I find so comforting is, in the crypto space, there are so many different projects coming in and really innovating, just like Ethos, sorry. I find that, like you say, very comforting and empowering, knowing that we are moving in such a strong direction right now. And the price really, to me, seems quite irrelevant. And so on that, Ethos has been a project that I've been really looking and following, really excited about. I feel like it's a really integrated platform. But I'd love for you to just kick off for someone who's new to Ethos, or Ethos. I wonder how many more times I'm going to slip that up. And just give them a 30,000-foot overview of what is Ethos.
Sure. Well, it really started from when my aunt was trying to buy Ethereum, and this was way back several years ago when Ethereum was in the single digits, and she just couldn't figure it out because she's not she wasn't a super technical person, but she really wanted to get involved in the space. She really liked what the space represented, the philosophy behind it, and the technology. But it was just a really developer-centric community and developer-centric industry, which made it really hard for new people to get into the industry. And what that made me realize is that if someone like her, someone who's she's a very smart individual, but if someone like her can't figure out how to get into this industry, the chances are there's a lot of other people who can as well. And so that's really what drove myself and many others to start this organization and start. Our mission is to create a financial ecosystem that is open, safe, and fair for everybody, and that means simplifying the industry, making it easy to understand, and providing the tools and technology that people need in order to successfully participate in this industry. So that starts with the universal wallet, which is a safe way for anybody to safe keep their digital assets. And we give you complete control of this wallet. You handle the private keys, and we help you with a smart key, which is a 24-word phrase that lets you self-custodize all of your digital assets across all the different chains. And very recently we announced our partnership with Fusion Financial, which is a regulated entity in the U.S. that will allow users of the universal wallet to invest and participate in crypto and traditional assets. And really, the idea behind that is to make the financial ecosystem safer, simpler, more accessible, and integrate crypto and the technology behind it into the modern financial system.
Mm-hmm. So it's really a one-stop shop for someone who wants to get invested easily into cryptocurrency and have like a one simple UI platform that they can then invest in different assets and hold all the keys on one wallet, essentially. And right. This partnership with Fusion Financial, this has then allowed them to invest in a barrage of different asset classes, or exactly what does that look like?
So on Fusion, just a high level disclosure, the Fusion Financial is a organization that is kind of jointly owned by many of the principals of Ethos. So it's a very close organization. So just kind of as a disclosure up front, but Fusion Financial is registered with the SEC in all 50 states. And it's what it does is it's going to provide three major services, which are banking, brokerage, and wealth management. So banking, everybody knows kind of banking, but what it's going to offer is a checking account, debit card, and kind of bill pay and transfer and payment services, all with kind of a partner institution that will kind of link directly to your crypto accounts. So everybody kind of really wants to make crypto spendable. So that's one way to do it, is to link it back into the traditional economy through bank. And actually, what's funny is that Fusion's been it's sort of really the only game in town, in that it's the only truly kind of fully approved crypto company so we've been actually having banks kind of chomping at the bit trying to deal with us, because what we've realized is kind of the mid-tier banks really want to get into this industry. They really want to participate in the crypto space because they see the opportunity and the growth and the opportunity to be viewed as a kind of crypto-friendly institution. So that's been really great. And then brokerage. So everyone kind of knows you go to Coinbase and you get to buy Bitcoin, Litecoin, and all the different digital assets that are on there. And that's basically, you can think of that like a very simplified brokerage interface. And if you begin to add more assets and more traditional assets, then you get kind of a holistic brokerage offering. And that's really what we're going to be doing on there. Starting with a few digital assets and a few traditional assets. And kind of building up from there. That's done also through kind of a brokerage partner. And then finally is the wealth management. So we're offering automated diversified portfolios, allowing people to invest safely and responsibly in the crypto and traditional space. So, and this is all backed by kind of traditional portfolio research. We have a wonderful gentleman from BlackRock, or two of them actually, and one of them was managing a $10 billion portfolio there, and he's kind of taken that traditional knowledge and that traditional kind of portfolio expertise and packaged it up into a automated investment solution. And it turns out actually that diversifying a small portion of your assets into cryptocurrencies backed by traditional portfolio research. And you can prove that through kind of the academic research and scrutiny level standards that regulators typically ask for. And so you can offer kind of an automated investing solution. And those are kind of three core services that then get paired along with the universal wallet, which is the way for you to track and store and send and receive your digital assets.
So this seems like it's something that makes a lot of sense to bring all under one roof. Fusion Financial, you mentioned, is the first, you could say, entity that's offering these services. Why is nobody else doing this yet? Or is there anything comparable? I know you mentioned Coinbase a little bit. Maybe you could touch on what the difference is between what you guys have set up versus Coinbase.
Sure. And so I think the key thing to understand in here is really one institution typically can't provide all these services kind of on its own unless it's a really, really large institution. But even the large institutions like Fidelity or Schwab, they're offering kind of the brokerage front end, but they're often not doing the order execution. So what you'll see in the financial industry is people use the word lots of intermediaries, but all these intermediaries are kind of regulated and participating in their kind of specific part of the industry. And so, but then one thing to understand is kind of the idea of risk. And so a money services business is one of actually the highest risk businesses to do kind of business within the financial industry. And that's a problem because when a bank wants to deal with, someone in the crypto space, the only people they can deal with are MSBs. And MSBs, that's really what has caused this, the crackdown on the credit cards and the debit cards because of all that counterparty risk that exists between an MSB and a financial institution. So what we've done is we've established a different type of regulated entity, a federally regulated entity that de-risks a lot of that model. And when you de-risk that model, you find that all these financial institutions that typically seemed hostile to the space weren't really hostile to the space. They were hostile to the risk that existed with the existing counterparties in the space. So now what we have is all these financial institutions that really kind of want to deal with a low risk individual, a low risk institution that is authorized and regulated to offer and kind of make those introductions to the partner institutions that can offer all these services.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So it's a much crisper, cleaner, legally compliant way for people to be able to have a diversified portfolio. Something that is out there right now, for example, would be a simple token like Crypto 20. how would you just say, I know for someone who's totally new to this concept, how would it differ from Crypto 20 as to what you guys are presenting as a viable option?
Crypto 20, is that, could you remind me?
Yeah, it's essentially just I know there's a lot of projects out there. It's tough to keep track. So essentially it's an index fund of cryptocurrency, just tracking the top 20 cryptocurrencies.
Do they offer kind of traditional kind of purchasing, and is it kind of ETF sort of offering?
It would literally just be one token, and then their platform is what tracks the top 20 cryptocurrencies, adjusting your portfolio as needed, and then the value of the token then corresponds to the value of the crypto space.
Got it. Okay, that to me sounds a little bit like a commingled fund and kind of investment company, which to my knowledge there's no investment company offering that sort of thing registered with the SEC, at least of the diversified portfolio. There are the kind of Bitcoin investment trusts that you can find on the stock exchanges, but those are basically shell companies that just purchase a lot of Bitcoin and then file to go public. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think I can talk specifically to any given project because I would have to know kind of the regulatory and legal realities of each one. But that would just be my high level assessment of something like that.
Okay, right on. What would you say is Ethos's major hurdle or challenge coming ahead in terms of getting this agreement with Fusion Financial really launched off and implemented in a large scale way?
I think the largest hurdle for us is really having people truly understand what we're doing and having people understand why we're taking certain approaches and why we're doing the things that we are. So people got kind of all riled up when they saw Coinbase, and they're saying, oh, Coinbase acquired an ATS, an RAA, and a broker dealer, and then and they're saying, why aren't you acquiring all those licenses, and why aren't you doing all that so you can do everything? And the reason is because you don't really need all those licenses. You don't need a set of licenses like that in order to offer the services that you want. And also, even if you offer certain services within that kind of regulatory structure, it's not always the most ideal set of service offerings. And the best example of that is an ATS. Typically only services high net worth individuals because it stands for an alternative trading system that often services kind of pension funds, accredited investors and institutions, and something like that is not really something that the everyday person could trade on. And in order to do that, you have to be basically a national securities exchange. And so all that's basically covered in the article that I released, I believe yesterday, talking about kind of the regulatory realities of what we're doing. And one important distinction is that Fusion is a fiduciary, and a fiduciary means that that they're legally obligated to have the best interests of the client in mind. And that's a very different model than kind of the traditional financial industry, because almost you very rarely deal with fiduciaries in the traditional space. Banks aren't fiduciaries, for example. And that's really in line with our mission, because we truly do want to look out for the best interests of the client, look out for the best interest of the investor, because the investor is at the end of the day shouldering the risk. And we don't want to just take, a large spread and charge large fees, to the benefit of ourselves. We want to, change the way that the existing system is run.
And this is exactly like a really interesting point that a lot of people would even invest with anything other than a fiduciary. You want to have your best interests held at heart. So for Ethos to be partnered up with a fiduciary seems like a really logical place for people to be going, rather than some kind of centralized entity that's really in it for their own personal gain and trying to see how much profit they can skim without us raising too much of a fuss about it.
Exactly. And actually, it's just kind of a more precise example. There's an idea in the financial industry called best order execution. And a fiduciary, if they're offering kind of that trading services for their clients, have to meet a really high regulatory standard for best order execution, rather than just kind of suitability standard that a normal institution would have to provide. So what that means is that as a fiduciary, that institution is often required to provide that kind of best order execution and that best price for the individual, rather than an institution that sort of can get away with 2.5% or 1% off, that's okay sort of thing, and they can take the spread.
For sure. So there's quite a massive potential here with the Fusion Financial Advisors. What would you say is your main goal? Like, everyone talks about the 5-year plan. What's your 5-year plan to have this integrated onto your platform?
Well, we have a really high level blueprint of all of the things that we want to do that we may share at some point. But the idea is, we want to prove out the model first in the U.S. with Fusion, and so we want to show how a regulated financial institution, which is Fusion, can operate on the bedrock architecture that is, what Ethos is building, Ethos's technology platform, and show that it's a regulatory gold standard, which is the U.S. And if you can do that in the U.S., then it's very easy to expand that internationally. So then you can imagine kind of a franchise Fusion system where you have kind of all the partners you need, the clearing partners, the banking partners, and the broker dealers and the investment advisor all kind of paired up on and kind of copied across different jurisdictions around the world. And what that creates is a network of financial services, so that anybody can kind of choose which financial service provider they want to access. And
Still here. You're good.
Oh, I'm still here. Okay. My mouse is glitching out for some reason. And so you get to choose which financial service provider that you want to use. And what we eventually imagine is kind of a integrated crypto traditional financial services for people all around the world that, has the best interests of the individual in mind.
Mm-hmm. And so that would be starting with, like you say, United States, and then scaling out from there as things feel solid with time.
Right. And what we want to kind of emphasize is that, if you can truly do it in the U.S. and that's why you've seen a lot of these crypto institutions right now moving to kind of island nations, is because a lot of them don't want to comply by the U.S. regulations. They're kind of fine doing what they want. And that's one approach. But if you can truly do it in the U.S., that's a model that can scale. And that's why you've seen such large financial institutions, like all based in the U.S. If you look at kind of the JP Morgans, the Schwabs, the Fidelities, all of them, they offer international solutions, but they're basically compliant by the U.S. standard.
Definitely, yeah. If you can make it in the U.S. in the crypto space as a starting point, then you're looking pretty good on a global spectrum. Going the other way, you can build it up slowly, but that's certainly a very strong first step to be starting with the United States. So we talked about Fusion Financial Advisors and what you're putting together with them. Also, a lot of people are curious about the universal wallet. I see that you guys are starting your beta testing fairly soon on the universal wallet. Just if you want to talk a little bit about that, what the roadmap is in store, and say like fiat gateways that may be upcoming as well.
Sure. So the universal wallet, we take the quality and security of that product really seriously, and it's taken longer than we and many people would have liked. But I think at the end of it, we'll have a really high quality product, because it has to meet the Fusion financial standards. It has to meet a much higher suitability standard than many other wallet providers, and that's why we kind of built our own. But yes, we're moving to mainnet beta testing very shortly, and we just got it kind of approved by Apple Test Flight, which means that we can expand it to up to 10,000 iPhone users and a nearly unlimited number of Android users. So that's really exciting, and because mainnet's a really big deal for us, because now people can actually lose real funds if we mess up. So we wanted to make sure it was really high quality before we started doing that.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So right now, a lot of people in the community are asking questions around, what you're excited about to see happen with Ethos. Like Bedrock is a really nice platform to be able to build anything. What do you foresee being built on top of it for the Ethos platform?
I see Ethos moving to become more and more a technology provider rather than kind of what people are kind of anticipating, kind of a retail solution provider. And I think some people may be alarmed by hearing that, but at the end of the day, that's going to actually offer better services, because that means there's a more diverse set of offerings. So you can imagine, hundreds of different companies building their own wallets on top of the Bedrock architecture, and hundreds of different companies, building their own fusions and their own kind of brokerage and their own kind of banking services on top of the Ethos platform. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing is an architectural play. We're trying to make the blockchain protocols as easy to use as internet protocols, and we're trying to simplify the crypto space while at the same time integrating it into the financial space. So what what I think you'll see in Ethos is that it'll increasingly build out the Bedrock offering and increasingly kind of build more and more partners on there. And we're already in talks with a lot of financial institutions that want to kind of want to operate on the Bedrock architecture, and they're actually coming like too quickly for us to deal with. So we have to
That's
kind of
a nice
hurry
problem.
up on that. Yeah.
So the token, the Ethos token, is essentially the fuel that's running this Bedrock platform, correct?
Yes.
And so in that case, is there any additional utility to holding the token is a question that a lot of people have, or is it just more so to be able to fuel it very much like Ethereum is a fuel to the network as well?
It's very much a utility token. And you'll see a lot of different kind of utility use cases for the token. The first example is going to be kind of the domain registration system. So the domain registration, so we want to offer people the ability to register and hold domains. That simplifies, so you don't have to kind of deal with these long hex addresses and all that. You can instead, send to like a Jeff's wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And then another
super
thing,
convenient, not having to copy paste that 74 word or how many character key.
Yeah, or worry about that the last character is wrong and then you're sending it into the ether,
That's right.
And another thing is Ethos tokens will be accepted as a payment method for Fusion as well, which is actually a really big step forward for us, because we, as a regulated entity, you have to disclose all of your activities. And that's one thing that, when we say, when people say, oh, you're not really the first. Well, the thing is, with every financial kind of license that you get, you can't sort of use it in a really broad sense. You have to use it in the kind of form that you've disclosed to the regulators. And so we disclosed all the activities, and one of those activities was accepting Ethos tokens as payment, which so we can do that in Fusion, and we can accept the token as payment there. And we also want it to be kind of, we're working with another payments provider or kind of building out a payment system to kind of build out a whole kind of crypto payment system built on the universal wallet. So I think the core utility, to sum it up, would be Bedrock, payments, and domains.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And so right now, privacy and security is a major trend that's emerging, in decentralized and centralized setups, I guess you could say. How is Ethos dealing with these two issues, the privacy of, say, users' information, the security of the private key, as well as the security of their information?
Sure. I think there's two separate issues in there, which is kind of the personal information privacy and then
Mm-hmm.
private key privacy. So I'll talk about the personal information thing first. Right now, we operate on a as little information as possible kind of basis. And so we're going to be working with kind of very large accredited KYC providers. Think of this kind of like the kind of same KYC providers that do stuff for banks and financial institutions. So, your private information is there, not with us. And we try not to take as much information as possible. And also we will be fully GDPR compliant for people around the world. So you get all the kind of data privacy rights that you get along with that. Mm-hmm. So right of erasure, right of rectification, and all that good stuff. And it's not just because we want to be compliant. I truly believe that that's something that GDPR was a really good step in the right direction, and it really impacted the companies not operating ethically the most. So I think it was a really good step, and something that people should take advantage of for companies around the world. And then secondarily, the private key policy. We never store your private key or transmit your private key. We'll never ask for your private key. We'll never force you to disclose your private key, all that stuff, because you are the owner of your private key. And for us to take ownership of that private key would be basically taking ownership of your funds, which is not something we want to do. We're not a bank. We're not an exchange. And we want you to be in control of your finances. So from that perspective, we don't take control of that, and we don't transmit it. And it's always on your device. And we also want to work with a hardware partner. We're in talks with a few to offer kind of a hardware integrated solution into the universal wallet, so it doesn't even have to be on your phone.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So Ethos doesn't necessarily control the funds; they're more so a platform to allow you to seamlessly manage them. Would you say?
Oh, it's very it's a very key point that we don't control any of the funds. We don't touch any of your funds on any part of the platform, and we're not a custodian of your funds, and we don't want to, because I think that's part of what's wrong with the traditional industry, is that they take control of your funds. And we've been seeing the same old stuff start to enter the crypto space, basically the next generation of crypto banks, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, we don't want your funds.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And that's definitely honorable to be going by that. And it makes a lot of sense. So for a lot of the people, they want to stay a little bit anonymous with a lot of their cryptocurrency use. How does that integrate with your platform? For example, if I wanted to just keep an anonymous account, would I need to fill out KYC or personal information to be able to work with Ethos?
So one thing, so the wallet is completely free. We don't ask you for any information to use the wallet, because it's just a tool for you to use. So it's no different than if you say use Jack's wallet, or if you use a wallet like that. But if you want to access financial services, it's the issue is, in the traditional financial space, there exist all these kind of KYC requirements that that really do exist for good reasons. That I think that most kind of ethical people in the space aren't really impacted all that much. So if you want to access, say, banking services, we can't really offer you an anonymous Swiss bank account. But it's not going to be an overly arduous KYC process. In fact, I would argue that the KYC process that you have to go through with kind of the traditional, with the people in the crypto space right now, is actually too arduous, and isn't the kind of level of scrutiny that is required in the financial space. And they're basically asking for the wrong things, and not offering kind of industrial grade KYC.
If there was one big misconception you feel about Ethos, or one message that you wanted to get across to everybody, that you just wanted to scream to the entire crypto space, to like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, what would that be?
That Ethos is regulated, or not Ethos, but we only work with regulated partners, and we embrace regulation, and we embrace the kind of the existing legal and financial structure that exists in the space, and in the kind of traditional space. And I think what people don't quite understand is that we're very progressive in that sense. We're more progressive than many of our peers. And we're building a structure that can scale, legal infrastructure that can really scale and bring inclusive financial services to people. Because crypto has built the technology, has built the underlying kind of the protocols that can power a next generation of financial services, and we can build on that. And it really requires a proper legal structure in order to make it stay inclusive. And offer that kind of 1%er services that are traditionally not accessible to people all around the world, and offering that in a compliant way. And that's really what we're all about. We want to offer those inclusive services to everybody.
Right on. And so for the people just tuning in, or who've missed the first little intro part, let's say the market totally crashes, everything goes into oblivion. What are your thoughts on what effect does that have on Ethos, if anything at all?
I mean, the thing is, the genie's already out of the bottle, and the people who've been in the space for several years, this crash is painful, but at the same time, we're still up thousands of percent from where the space started, and so the thing about this space is that the technology behind it truly is revolutionary. The technology behind Bitcoin, the technology behind Ethereum, has the potential to change the way the financial system is run. And that's not going to change. The price of that isn't going to change that technology. And, the value creation is going to come when the use cases are there. So I would say, it's painful right now, but if you look back, it'll seem obvious that this technology is going to change the world. Fully agree with that.
When you look at Ethos would you say it's more of out on its own limb, leading a pack, or would you say that there's other projects that might be chasing the tails of Ethos, and what would those be, and what are the advantages that you see or standouts of Ethos over the rest of the crypto ecosystem?
Sorry, my mouse is trying to make me leave this meeting.
Okay. Don't do that. Stay.
I don't know what's happening to it, but
no worries.
I I think we've seen definitely a few organizations start to like copy, either the designs of what we're doing or kind of the marketing or the we haven't seen people really copy much of the legal structure, but we've seen a few, but at the end of the day, I haven't seen a real competitor to what we're doing because nobody's focusing solely on the architecture. People say we're competing with Binance, we're competing with Coinbase, we're competing with Circle, and to some extent, in certain areas of our service, we are, but we're offering something fundamentally different with a different legal structure. And that's, I think that's something important to understand. But yeah, I mean, I've seen other companies claiming to be universal wallets, claiming to be fully compliant, but most of the time they're MSBs. But
So you guys really feel like you have a leg up in terms of like compliance and regulation and being on the right side of the law in that regard.
Yeah, well, I mean, Steven, our chief compliance officer in Fusion, always tells me not to say we're first, but
right.
but because it's hard to say if you really are, but I think we can comfortably say that we are one of the only organizations registered with the SEC, or Fusion is, that that has disclosed cryptocurrency activities and is authorized to deal in the crypto space. So that's an important distinction, and we very recently got Fusion very recently got that approval. So we have to start building on that, and it's all going to be built on the universal wallet architecture.
Right on. I'd like to dive into a few questions from the community members and toss them your way. They're a little funner by nature, but I think a lot of people just want to get to know you as a person. You're a super personal, smiley, happy guy, and I think a lot of people feel that. So what has been your biggest learning or insight moment since the day that you started Ethos, or I guess Bitcoins back in the day?
That's a good question. I think the biggest point of learning was that not every developer is as good as they say they are. Part of the delays that people have been experiencing in the wallet, we learned a lot along the way, and I think we've landed at a place that's really good, and this architecture is going to scale and it's going to be able to service millions of people around the world. But we got there kind of through a rocky path, and I think part of that was because there doesn't exist very much kind of infrastructure in this space. And actually, kind of an anecdote is we were kind of testing out some of this open source stuff to kind of to start to integrate that into the universal wallet architecture. And we found that actually there were a lot of really small bugs in the open source stuff that made us believe that perhaps these companies have been actually putting these little small bugs in this open source stuff to actually slow other organizations down. So we had to kind of rewrite a lot of that and rewrite a lot of this open source tools that people sort of, think that Bitcoin JS, it works. And for most of the core functions it does, but for some of the, more esoteric ones, it doesn't. So that was a big learning thing for us, and really kind of building the right architecture.
Yeah, these things take time, especially when it's a new technology. And the developers are still so brand new to the space. I think that's what people don't give these projects enough credit for, is that these things take time, especially since it's so new. If it was building a simple website using Java or something like this, it wouldn't be so bad. But I think it's so new. The things just naturally take time. There's hiccups to come. And I think it's great that you guys are launching so soon, really relatively. I know there's impatience, I think, is a big theme that I see in the crypto space. Just that instant gratification. But it's always nice to see the progress, no matter what the speed is.
I always laugh because I remember last year I saw a job description from Microsoft saying 5 years of Solidity experience. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah. I think there was an interview on CNN of some guy who's promoting a coin, and he's like, yeah, I've been in the blockchain space for about 11 years now. It's like, oh, okay, right on.
Hey, Satoshi.
Yeah, exactly. Free Satoshi. So back to the questions. If you could create a company other than Ethos, what would it be focused on and why?
What would it be focused on? I mean, I've had a lot of ideas, but the issue is in this crypto space, there doesn't exist a technology provider like Ethos that can allow all these other cool ideas. So I'm always like, I'm always, whenever I see all these other companies kind of doing these moonshot things, like, let's decentralize the insurance industry, or let's
Right.
do kind of tokenized mortgages, and I'm like, that's awesome. I think that those are awesome things, but it's a little bit too early for that in the space because there's no infrastructure providers. Basically, the only providers we have are exchanges and places to buy and sell. Like that's about it in this space. And the DApp ecosystem is still very, very new and early. So I mean, if I was going to create something else, I would love to kind of try one of those moonshot projects. I always thought that something like a card game on the blockchain, or kind of a tokenized property, or kind of mortgage or securities kind of platform would be really cool. And actually, part of what we want to do long term, 5 to 10 years, is build tokenized securities into the Bedrock platform. And we've been in talks with kind of regulators internationally about trying to do that. But yeah.
A moonshot. I like it. Yeah. Well, it seems like Ethos in itself is a moonshot too. So the ambition isn't lost on your project. That's for sure. Other than the simplicity and ease of use, what is the biggest obstacle cryptocurrency needs to fix before it receives mainstream adoption?
The biggest one in my mind is regulatory approval, and not necessarily regulatory approval, but regulatory infrastructure. Because right now, the space is very hostile to regulators. It's sort of trying to work their way around the regulators rather than working with the regulators. And to their defense, in some cases they sort of have to work around the regulators because some of them have been historically hostile. But I think a lot of the regulators, especially in the U.S. and internationally, aren't actually as hostile as people sort of perceive them to be. They want this space to flourish. They want this space to be safe for people, because if it's not safe for people and people are working around the regulations, people are going to get involved anyways, and it's just going to be a mess. So I think that's the biggest hurdle. Is it needs to be regulated, and it needs to be regulated intelligently, and not just kind of slap on regulations.
Yeah, and that definitely is going to be taking time too. If building projects like Ethos takes time, the government takes ample more time than that. So that's something that we can sit back, relax, and watch slowly evolve for sure.
Right.
Another question is, what is your favorite blockchain project besides Ethos?
Well, I'll be cheating if I said anything other than Ethereum.
Right, of course.
But I mean, Ethereum. When I first fully understood what Ethereum did, many years ago, it was just like a mind-blowing moment. I was like, wait a minute, like that's actually incredible, and it's incredible that someone like kind of Vitalik was managed to think that up and build it. And I don't think people still fully appreciate the wonder of Ethereum and the incredible technological ingenuity that went into Ethereum. So that's and in my mind, Ethereum's already won the DApp race. If you look at the number of developers that are on Ethereum and in the Ethereum ecosystem versus any other smart contract ecosystem, and the number of transactions processed by Ethereum and the amount of value processed every day on Ethereum, it's just Ethereum has already won in my mind.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the scalability and the switching to sharding, Plasma, Casper, all those kinds of things?
Oh, I think those are great developments, and honestly, I wouldn't trust anyone other than Vitalik to build those. So I'm very optimistic about that stuff, and I think that those will be wonderful additions to the Ethereum ecosystem. What we're doing is, we're standing on kind of the financial and the legal side and putting together kind of the technology components and building a legal and financial architecture, and we'll operate on whatever Ethereum kind of throws at us, because I've sort of been in the operating assumption that this developer space has been growing, and it's growing rapidly, and the technology will be there by the time we need it.
Yeah, fully agree with that. So the next little series of questions for them are more rapid fire style. You can pass on them if you want. They're a little more esoteric, tongue-in-cheek questions. But so here we go. What purchase, and these are inspired by Tim Ferriss. What purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months?
What purchase? Oh, in the last 6 months. I mean, if I'm allowed to go longer than 6 months, a really high quality mouse.
Which is glitching now.
Oh yeah, well this is not actually, this is the low quality mouse. I'm on another computer right now. So
High quality. If you, second question, if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it that would have a reach of 1 billion people, what would it say on it?
Buy Bitcoin? I don't know. I haven't even thought about that. I mean, that'd be free advertising for whoever gets it. So I'd probably hand it off to Amateo and ask him to put something on it.
Right on. He'd know what to do for sure. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
What new belief, behavior, or habit? That's a. I think it's hard for me to point at any kind of individual habit in particular. I mean, I'm a strong believer in kind of continuous improvement and continuously kind of improving, not only, an organization, but, yourself and your habits, and continuously kind of fine tuning them. So I guess that attitude of continuous improvement.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a strong one for sure. Final, more esoteric style question. What advice would you give a smart driven college student about to enter into the real world?
Learn and read as much as you can. So, decide what interests you. So for me in particular, it's the intersection of technology and legal, and the implications of that kind of on economic conditions and, the crypto space in general. That's my area of interest. So what I did is I read as much as I could. I read any book that was relevant to that, which there aren't all that many, but anything that's relevant to that, all the white papers, all the technology platforms, and just read everything that you can. And before you know it, you'll become an expert in that space. And if you're an expert, you can always find something to do with that expertise.
I fully agree. When you find something that you're passionate about and you just dive head in, then you eventually become an expert. And that's where sustainability and like being able to thrive from your passion is like, it's put on a silver platter right in front of you. So that's really inspiring to see that, you've been able to do that in yourself. So aside from beta testing, using the wallet, spreading the word about Ethos, how can the community, the crypto community at large, help Ethos become more of a mainstream adopted thing?
Well, I think the biggest thing they can do is they can spread the word about it, but also they can just use it. And if it's useful to them, and if they find it useful, tell other people that it's useful. And hopefully, at the end of the day, we're providing a useful product, we're providing a useful service, and the financial services, are empowering that we're offering you. And that's if we've done that, then I think that's very successful. And if you can share that success with other people, that's, and make other people happy too, that's great as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to chat today with the crypto community, and for everyone who's been tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Hope you're weathering through the volatility storm. Shingo, it's been a pleasure having you on.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you very much for having me.